All right, so the numbers out of Canada are pretty good. The numbers out of the States are mixed, but I'll get into those in a minute. Alberta had 37 new cases yesterday, 509 active, 37 in the hospital, no new deaths, 422,000 tests completed. So the numbers out of Alberta are definitely starting to look better. I mean, they never look bad. I mean, a lot of people were all hysterical about, ooh, second wave, we'll re-lock down, all this garbage. But the reality is that we were just flat out discovering more people, largely young people, and that's the same thing out of the States. You look at the rest of Canada, BC is, I think, one of the only provinces that are actually having a slight uptick, but again, they're having like 20, 25 cases a day. It's nothing close to having to be worried about. Ontario has been doing very good over the last week. Quebec has been doing very good. Saskatchewan and Manitoba are both pretty much fully reopened. I don't know exactly where they're at, but I think Saskatchewan's in stage 4 out of 5, so they're pretty much reopened. I don't know exactly how Manitoba is, but I know gyms and stuff have been open there for like a month now. Pretty much everything's open there from what I can tell. So the numbers out of Canada are actually very good. The fact that we're pretty much reopened. I mean, Alberta is technically we're in stage 2, which means most businesses can reopen. A lot are still either not open or open but with massive restrictions. So that's kind of the problem when it comes to Alberta. I mean, I think it's pointless too. I mean, you look at, I mean, it's obvious for many reasons in that the government has told us this entire time, and I guess this is something to point out for starters. There will be a push to re-lock down. If I had to, I mean, I guarantee you there will be a push to re-lock down. If I had to bet on whether or not there will be another lockdown, I would probably say no, but I think it'll be close. And I think it'll be close because over the summer, I think people will get complacent. And I mean, for good reason too. I mean, people have every reason to not be worried about this, but I think that the government didn't get everything they wanted out of this. They wanted to get more out of this, and they will let a second or a third wave get worse, and or I mean, or they'll just flat out release it. I mean, China released it on the world either unintentionally or largely, I mean, intentionally in one way or the other. Either they flat out released it on the rest of the world, or they kind of didn't in the fact that they closed off Wuhan, so they knew that it was a public health threat, but they didn't close off Wuhan to the rest of the world. So if you're from Wuhan, yeah, you can't travel to a different area in China, but you can gladly go to Canada or the States, or Italy, and that's why we've had such a bad breakout. And the problem too is that our government has let it get this bad. Like our government has let it get this bad. And that's the big problem too. The problem has hardly anything to do with the lockdowns. And I think this is the biggest thing that bothers me too, is that we have so many people that pretend that the lockdowns have a significant effect on the spread when they clearly don't. They clearly don't. Um, I mean, look at New York. I literally made a video about it that two-thirds of people testing positive in New York were people that were staying home, thus meaning that the lockdowns have a minimal effect on the spread. Um, Again, the other thing to bring up too is that Bill Gates, who is probably the biggest grifter in the world right now, the next George Soros, it seems, he has been on video saying, yeah, we're gonna have pandemic one, we're gonna have pandemic two. Now he's been talking about it. Yeah, we're pretty much through with pandemic one, and pandemic two will be on the way. So there will be another thing too. Like we can't get, I mean, we can't get complacent in the idea of we should not care about this. I mean, largely, I mean, we should have some restrictions, but we should largely not care about the lockdowns, about all the BS rules and regulations. The thing to care about and not allow us to get complacent about is thinking we're out of the woods and that, oh, yep, we're the economy is going to be on the uptick. The government's not going to, things are slowly going to go back to normal. That's not the case. There will be a push for to re-lock down. There will be a second or a third wave. The government will probably let it get worse than it otherwise would have if they didn't screw things up like they always do. So the point being is that don't get complacent, basically. And again, the numbers out of the states are bad in some ways, but again, good in some ways, in that they had the most cases they've ever had yesterday. Now that is partially due to the fact that they're testing more people. If you look at as a percent of, I mean, if you account for the number of people tested on average, this isn't the highest day. I mean, this isn't the highest day, and it's the same for Canada too. They're testing a lot more people. Yeah, they had the day with the most amount of cases. Yes, the amount of cases has ticked up. Um, but if you look at as a percentage of people actually, the percentage of people actually being tested. So, I mean, let's just say that the states test 100,000 people a day, and now they're testing 200,000 people a day. Yes, they've had a record number of cases, but if you test double the amount of people, in theory, you should discover probably double, more realistically, probably like almost double as many people. So yeah, they had the most cases, but it's not something we need to worry about. Plus, um, George Floyd was killed a month ago. He was killed a month ago, and this uptick hasn't started. I mean, it started about what, a week ago. So I don't think it has as much to do with the protests as what people think. It definitely has a little bit to do with that. But I think it's just large. It's more they're just testing more people. The protests definitely accounted for somewhat of an increase in cases, but the vast majority of people that are going to these protests are young people, which means they have nothing to worry about. Their chances of dying from this are less than the flu, so they have nothing to worry about. And again, um, Fauci, I believe, brought it up. Trump brought it up in that the vast majority of the disproportionate amount of cases are young people. They're largely asymptomatic people. And if they weren't, then we should see the amount of deaths being double or triple what they are. And the deaths haven't ticked up too. You see the fact that cases have ticked up, but deaths haven't ticked up, which just means that they're discovering young people, they're discovering asymptomatic. I mean, generally they're one and of the same, which just shows that it's nothing we should be worried about. It's nothing we should be worried about. So again, I just wanted to reiterate that. This is from Peter Sweden. Now, again, the topic of systemic racism has been all over the news within the last couple weeks, for good reason and for bad reason, largely bad reason, in the fact that it's not a thing. It's in fact, I mean, a better way of putting it is it's not a thing in that the way they're trying to tell you that it is, in the fact that they think that there's systemic racism against blacks when they can't give you any examples of that. All the examples they give you are either flat out wrong. They'll tell you that, I mean, the easiest one is, oh, blacks are in prison more. Well, blacks commit a lot more crime. If and the numbers show that the arrest records and the prison population percentage matches up almost perfectly with the amount of black encounters with the police, the crime victimization surveys. So again, there is no systemic racism against blacks. If anything, it's against whites. And two, the first thing that I would point out here is that um, you look in the comments section, there's a bunch of people saying yes, but against whites. So again, most of these people are probably people that say yes, but against whites. And I would add into that group too, Asians, because Asians have to score higher than whites, and whites have to score higher than blacks to get into college. So again, that is an example of actual systemic racism that no one talks about, because their idea of ending racism is to make racist laws. Like again, these people are absolutely insane, like absolutely insane. Um, so this is from the UBC, the paper out of the UBC. So they say board chair Michael Korenberg has resigned after he came under fire for liking tweets criticizing Antifa and Black Lives Matter protests. Um, Again, I'm not going to get into it more, but it's beyond insane. The fact that people can't even disagree with people politically anymore is, it's beyond insane too. And the fact that too that you get criticized for not liking Antifa, like come on, like Black Lives Matter is a political organization. Um, they basically exist to help out the left. Again, I mean, the group that was raising money for Black Lives Matter gives tons of money to Democrats. They give tons of money to Planned Parenthood. So of course they're a political organization. Why is that even a question? Like, why is that even a question? It shouldn't even be discussed. Like, I mean, it should be discussed, or I shouldn't put it that way, but it shouldn't even be a question. And that's a crazy thing too, that we're at the point where people are getting fired for basic political beliefs, and these aren't fringe political beliefs. Black Lives Matter and Antifa want to defund the police. That is the position that a very small percentage of the population wants. Um, and yet, again, this guy basically got fired because he held the position that the majority of people have. That is where we're at in society, and that is how crazy things are. And the take home point here being is that um, people who recognize how crazy things have gotten need to speak up. Again, that you always hear about the silent majority and all this kind of stuff. Well, the silent majority needs to stop being silent, because before too long, you're going to be the silent minority. And the thing that I've pointed out a lot too is that this isn't going to end well. If these people keep getting their way, these people being the left and the far left specifically, um, anybody who doesn't agree with them politically is going to end up dead. Like anyone who doesn't agree with them politically is going to end up dead. And the thing too is that they'll start with the people, the same way they do censorship, all this kind of stuff. They'll start with the people that appear the most crazy, even though they're not as crazy as they actually are. Like I say, they start with Alex Jones, just using him as an example, and it's like, oh, he's crazy. He believes this conspiracy theory, which he does believe some conspiracy theories. I'm not denying that, but so does the left. I mean, the left believes in Russia collusion. The left believes, that if someone throws on a dress that makes them a girl, if they like, again, the idea that the left doesn't believe in conspiracy theories is absolutely insane. I mean, they they sorry, I mean, they believe in tons of things that are anti-science, conspiracy theory. I mean, Russia collusion literally is probably the biggest conspiracy theory of the last decade, but yet most people on the left believe it. So yeah, so the idea that, and like I say, too, getting back to the main point here, they will start with the people that appear to be the most out there. That's how they always do it. Censorship never starts like that. Persecution never starts like that. They always start with the people that are, it's the first they came for this person, I said nothing, then they came for that person, I said nothing, so on and so forth, and eventually I was the last one standing and no one was there to stand up for me, kind of example, too. So this is something that people need to do. I mean, I don't know if it's the majority of people, but I do think that there's at least 30-40% of the population, probably more. I mean, I'd like to think, um, that understand that this is complete and utter garbage. I mean, it's complete and utter garbage, and we need to stand up for it because this will not end well if we don't. And this is from Charlie Kirk. He makes a very good point here, saying Democrats say DACA recipients shouldn't be held accountable for the crimes of their parents. So, by their own logic, why should anyone be held financially responsible for racism of the 17th and 18th century slave owning ancestors? Again, another thing to point out too is that a very small percent of the population actually owned slaves. This is one of the many lies of slavery and how we're taught about slavery, is that a very small percent of the population actually owned slaves. So the idea that if you're white, that means you're white in the States, especially in the South, that your ancestors owned slaves, it's just a flat out lie. It's just a flat out lie that a very small percent of the population actually owned slaves. And getting back to the main point here is that they say that, I mean, their basic argument for illegal immigration is that parents bring their kids here illegally, the kids should be able to stay because they didn't commit the crimes. Well, the problem with that is that if your parent robs a bank and gives you the money and gets caught, you don't get to keep the money. So it's baked into the law that you don't get to keep the fruits of a crime. That's how the law works, but yet the left wants to have it in a different way. Now, the reason the left wants it in a different way, number one, is that the left has a almost no ability to recognize and perceive threats. And the main point being is that they want the votes. The left can't win by having a level playing field. Like if the mainstream media and the public schools and the universities were actually honest and objective, the left would absolutely get destroyed in elections, like absolutely destroyed. Um, the thing is that the media, the schools, and the universities are incredibly biased in their favor. So that's why they win elections. Not only that, they have been having mass immigration for the last generation into Canada and the States, and these immigrants from the third world overwhelmingly vote for the left. So that's why they want the immigration. Again, they don't care about diversity. Again, they always cite that as their reasons, but yet they completely ignore the fact that, um, like 90% of university professors and public school teachers are on the left. Again, they never point out that, oh, the public school teachers and university professors, we need a little more diversity there. We have like no conservatives that teach. They never point that out. They never go to a field that is majority women. I mean, public school teacher, for example. They never say, yeah, we need more men, teaching kids. They never say that. And if they actually cared about diversity, they would bring that up all the time. But they don't. They only care about it when it benefits them, which is just proof that when I say that illegal immigration and all that kind of stuff just exists as a political issue, it's basically definitive proof of that. So anyway, this is from CBC, and again, they say the virus taught us Canada. Sorry, the virus taught Canada a costly lesson that early border closures can work. And again, the fact that it took CBC 3 months to admit this kind of stuff is absolutely beyond me. And the fact that again, this is a outlet that has billions of dollars in funding every year, and yet they can't figure something out that someone like me, a random guy on the internet, can figure out. Like I was saying literally right at the time, yeah, we should have closed our borders. We had, I think, Tom Cotton, Republican senator of the states, literally late January saying we should be closing our borders. We had, I mean, we knew that the reason why the virus got so bad in Italy and Spain was because people came from China and spread it there. We had more than enough warning. It couldn't have been more obvious, but the liberal government would decided to rather virtue signal and talk about, oh, borders don't work. Again, it's just absolutely insane how insane these people are. And again, if borders don't work, then why don't you get rid of all the borders in your personal life? Why don't you get rid of all the borders in your personal life? So again, the people are just flaming hypocrites. And again, speaking of borders, um, the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, again, I'm sure everybody's aware of that at this point, but I mean, if you're not, in a nutshell, there was a bunch of largely communist leftists um, in Seattle that took over I think it's a span of about 6 or 7 city blocks. Like it was a pretty good size area, and created their own autonomous. Now, again, they're not actually autonomous. If they were, they would be able to generate their own electricity, their own food, their own water, all that kind of stuff, which they didn't do any of that. So they're not actually autonomous. They just call themselves that. But anyway, one of the first things that they did, in fact, the first thing, is created border checkpoints, um, which again, these far leftists just rail against Trump for wanting a border. But yet, one of the first things they did is create borders, and they didn't let people in if they didn't adhere to their values. But the other things that they did, they abolished the police in the area. They won't let the police in there. Um, they created their own de facto police force. Not only that, they went around business to business, shaking down business owners to help pay for their protection. So again, they basically they complain ad nauseum about borders, but yet they create borders. They complain ad nauseum about police, but yet they create police. They create, I mean, everything that they complained about, they created. So again, it's just beyond insane. These people, it's just beyond insane. So anyway, again, it's just flaming hypocriticalness and hypocrisy, sorry. Um, but this is just definitive. Whenever you hear the left make oh, you're racist if you want a border wall, or talking about the immorality of border walls and immigration and all that kind of stuff, and even gun control too, just point them to this situation too, that the left doesn't even believe their own values. The left doesn't even believe their own values, so why in the world should we? Like, why in the world should we? So anyway, I'm going to leave the video there. If you liked it, make sure to hit that like and subscribe. Check out my PayPal and email. I got linked in the description. Again, appreciate any donations, but at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. And also check me out on Twitter, check me out on BitChute, and check me out on Parler. Again, I just got Parler. I'm not sure if that's actually how you pronounce it, but again, I just got that um, username, same as my YouTube channel. So check me out there too if you have Parler. All the links are in the description, so you can find them all there.